With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me at the Bourbon Life Studios today is my good friend, Matt. How you doing?
At the, you forget for a second there?
I did. I was going to say live, but
we're in person. And
we are in person.
We're at the table.
That's right. We are at the Bourbon Life table. So
yeah.
it's a rare occurrence that we get to sit around. Most of our guests that we have, we do it online. So it's nice to have somebody in person with us. Recording around, what do you call it, Matt? The flights of the
round.
Flights of the round table.
Yeah. So always great to be around this table. And this episode in particular,
yeah,
I have had my eyes set on for quite some time.
Yeah. It's funny because, we had our guest on the show last year talking about something completely different than what we're going to be talking about today. Mm-hmm. And the idea, you kind of said, hey, we need to do that. And our guest was like, yeah, we could do that. So it's taken us a little over a year to make this happen, but we finally followed through, and now we're here. And I'm really excited about this one. So with all that said, man, we've got this great build-up. Matt, tell everybody who we have with us today.
All right, and he's got quite a title here, so I'm just going to run through all of it right at the start. He is a journalist, copywriter, speaker, board member at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and also author of the book, Country Ham, a Southern Tradition of Hogs, Salt, and Smoke. Steve Coomes, welcome back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
This is much more fun in person.
Yeah,
I believe it. I mean, all the aromas, all the smiles, all the cool stuff that we didn't get to do the last time we did this. Was that COVID, I guess?
Well,
and it was also because there were it was Diane, yourself.
No.
Oh, sorry. This was the festival, so it was Randy.
Yeah, we had Randy on the show.
Right.
Yeah, because we had you on the show because you're a board member with the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So you and Randy Prosciutto were the guests.
Truly, I'm a flunky. The board. I'm a paid contractor who does the content. And,
okay.
And so I'm not at the level of the board.
I got you.
Those are important people on the board.
You're important too.
I'm a hard help.
Yeah. Well, we saw you this year. Of course, I didn't make it to the festival last year, but we had you and Randy on the show. I believe it was August last year. I got my notes. August 2021, episode 78. And that was all about the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. But I wasn't able to make it because I did have COVID. But this year we made it down. I got to see you, and you're like, man, running around. All you guys are like crazy running around down there.
We have a very small team.
Yeah, but you guys killed it.
A lot.
Man,
Thank you.
That was a great. We were talking about it before we started recording, and I don't want to make the whole show about the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, but
It's okay. Go ahead.
goodness gracious, man, what an event, what a setup, it is. And I never went to it before, but I'd heard and talked to people, and it sounded more almost kind of like a county fair. You go and
That's correct. Right.
yeah, people set up with little tents and little things, and you got your kettle corn and your hot dogs and things like that. And now, man, it is an extravaganza and an experience. I mean, it really is, man.
I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. I mean, we've worked hard on it. The distillers were in our ears in 2019 and saying, no more county fair.
Yeah.
No more party for Bardstown. This is, we're in the bourbon capital of the world. We want this to be about bourbon, and we want sips to lips. And if you can't get us sips to lips, we can't do the festival.
Yeah.
And boy, did we make it happen.
Yeah, you guys did. Matt and I went down there. We've talked about it already several different times.
Yeah. It was done really professionally.
Yeah,
it was the gist. Everything was casual, but really professional. There were Everything, the flow of the whole event worked well. Tents were set up for the people that had access to tents and wanted to get food or do whatever. The flow was just really professional. But I thought it was really great for us, Mark, because we got to meet and see all the people that we've had ties with throughout the years and talked to on shows and talked about meeting up with. And it was great. Great to get everybody together in a really awesome atmosphere for it.
That's great. I mean, one of our unofficial mantras, it's about the whiskey and the people who make it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't fall under that, chances are it's not going to be part of the festival.
Yeah, and it was great, man, because there were so many brands, and I love the way it was set up with the larger, I guess larger distilleries on one side, but then more of the kind of the craft distillers on the other.
I love that craft side.
I did too. I mean, we spent a ton of time, and it was cool because we had so many of those people on the show. But again, most of them we record remotely. So it was an opportunity for us just to walk around and actually say hi and shake a hand, and get to talk to them in person. So that was a very incredible experience for us. But man, we had a great time. So thank you guys for that. So
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
Just wait till 2023. There'll be some great big changes and cool changes.
Well, looking forward to those for sure. So let's jump in here, and let's talk. Well, I tell you what, let's talk about what we have poured up. But you brought some stuff for us to snack on, but let's talk about the pour that we have here. This was something that I just picked up this week. A friend of mine just happened to be in Bardstown to take his mom to the doctor and just randomly stopped by the distillery.
No, that's a good boy.
Isn't that great? Yeah. I mean, he's a good guy. He lives here in Lexington. His mom and dad live in Bardstown, and he just happened to stop at the distillery while he was down there. He sent me a picture from the gift shop and said, "Hey, is this a good bottle? Should I buy this?"
This was at Heavenhill.
This was at Heavenhill. It's the William Heavenhill, the 15-year-old bourbon that just came out this past week. So I was like, yes, and it's definitely a great bottle. And if your wife is there with you, can you please buy a second bottle for me? So he did. So we got this. Matt, what's the proof on it?
109. And let's see, there were 34 barrels pulled from the 4th floor of Rick House Double L at Shenley.
Great.
15 years. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Heavenhill. I'm a big fan of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Anything that comes out of Heavenhill, the old Fitz, I mean, everything that they put out, I'm a fan of. But these older barrels, and especially when you get into that 109, 110, up to the 120 proof range, that really speaks to my heart.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I see you're over there sniffing on it. What do you pick up on this one?
Strong aromas of the oak.
Yeah.
Coming through. There's like oak and the vanilla, a lot of barrel influence with it as well. There's a sweetness of like honey that I pick up, honeycomb with it as well, and almost like a straw or like a corn cob type aroma, which I think is a little funny, but certainly welcoming. But just really rich, really vibrant, nice, little bit of pepper, a little spice on it as well too, coming through the nose.
Yeah,
but just really, really rich, really bold, but really balanced. Doesn't seem to be out of sorts.
It's not out of
whack
in either direction. I don't know, when you get something this old, sometimes you run into that where you're going to get it. But I do get that oak influence, that sweetness. To me, I still pick up almost like a little bit of a cherry on this.
Cherry cough syrup.
Yeah, I get the cherry
Absolutely.
that comes through, and that is reminiscent to me of that Elijah Craig Barrel Proof.
Yeah.
When I drink that, I usually get a lot of that cherry note on there. That sweetness, Matt, the honey, that was a good pickup on that one. Steve, what about you? What do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
I always skew toward rye, even though there's not a ton of rye in this. It's amazing that this, what is this whiskey? 78 corn, 12, 10 rye, and 12 malted barley. That's a small amount of rye.
Yeah.
It just, Matt, you had said the pepper, total black pepper in there.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it just finds a way to stand on its own in this whiskey. And I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. So I was excited to get this. Now, the pricing on this one, just so everybody, I mean, it was $2.90. So it's a little bit on the pricey side, but since my friend offered to buy it I paid him back, but I was like, I couldn't turn him down, I couldn't say, no, I don't want that bottle. And I'm happy I got it because it's the first bottle of the William Heavenhill that I've managed to actually pick up. And like I said, since I'm a big fan of the product that they put out at Heavenhill, I was really excited to get this one. And, people, and I hate the secondary market for the most part, unless I can score a great deal from somebody. So, I got
as long as it's good for you.
I got 2 bottles of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof for $60 each. the other day. I just, so I'm like, when I can get a deal like that, but somebody put a bottle of this on for like $900. I'm like, come on, man. I mean, but anyway, people are going to do what they want to do. But I was happy to pick this up. So I tell you what, Steve, because you brought some treats for us to snack on, because we're going to do this whole show really about country ham. So do you want to tell everybody what you brought for us to enjoy with our bourbon today?
Yeah, so we have 2 hams, both of which were made from heritage breed hogs, which I like. The meat is much more marbled, fatty in a good way.
Okay.
And I like the fact that those pigs lived a great life until that one bad day. And just like whiskey improves with age, ham does too, if it's managed correctly. And we've got on the left here a Broadbent 24-month-old country ham made from a heritage breed. I'm trying to think of the breed. Anyway, I'm sorry I've forgotten that. The one on the right is from Newsom, Nancy Newsom, or Colonel Bill Newsom's aged Kentucky country ham. It's a mouthful.
Okay.
That is a 30-month-old.
Okay.
Which that's in terms of ham terms, that's an old ham. Part of that is tied to the demand for those hams falling off during the pandemic shutdowns, because many of these would go to high-end restaurants.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That knew how to treat these things, how to cut them like prosciutto, like we have them here today. These are not cooked. Do not cook country ham. I treat it exactly like the European hams.
Okay.
And it is freaking delightful and funky. And Newsom hams are the only ones that are aged outside in the climate. I mean, they're not. The Broadbent one was completely inside in a controlled climate. Think heat cycling, for instance. It's exactly what they do, is fake the seasons inside, which is really smart, because it's easy to maintain temperature, time, all that stuff, and keep insects away.
Right.
So Nancy Newsom is still aging them in cinder block warehouses, and to keep things as neat as possible, but let nature dictate how these things are going to taste.
Okay. So the thinner slice, or the smaller slices, you said this was Broadbent?
That is the Broadbent.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's 24 minutes. Now, I could tell you, as soon as you unwrapped, because you brought these on a little tray, and we were sitting around here before the show started, and you started unwrapping these, and the aroma just wafted through the room. And even sitting here on the plate, and it's 1.5 feet away from me, but I can still, Matt, you've already dug in over there, man. So, but the smell is just, it's heavenly. I mean, and it's funny to say that, but yeah. So what do you think, Matt, in terms, you've already tasted it, man? What do you get?
It's
Goodness.
Yeah. Nice, salty, smoky, porky goodness. It carries beyond just the salt, though, kind of transcends a lot of the cured flavors that you would get. That smoke runs through, and it's got just the really natural, like good, oily, fatty, greasy, just everything that you come to expect out of like really nice salted country ham, smoked meat.
It's so good, and I love the fact that my fingers are greasy, my lips are kind of greasy now, but
The aroma won't go away until you wash them, and you have to wash hard.
yeah, I may just leave it on there.
And your wife is going to
She'd be like,
Yeah.
"Wow, yeah."
wrestling a hog.
It's like the old Brady Bunch show where Davy Jones touched Marsha's cheek, and she's like, "I'll never wash my cheek again." So I'm gonna be like, "Never gonna wash these hands again." So, Steve, let's talk about your background. Matt read your intro. You've got a lot of things that you have done in the past. You're a writer, you're a speaker, you're a presenter. I mean, you do a lot of different things. So can you kind of talk about your background, how you got into this, and then how you got into bourbon, and then into country ham as well?
I was fortunate to start working in fine dining when I was a kid, about 15 years old. And I always wanted to be a journalist, but I'm 58 years old, so my class was the very last one at St. Xavier High School that used truly manual typewriters. And I was a horrible typist. There was no way in hell that anybody was going to hire me, even if I had a college degree at that time, because my typing skills were just abysmal. Well, several years later, computers came out, and word processing was there, and a girlfriend at the time said, you can correct everything that all your mistakes in word processing, right? And I said, no, I didn't know about that. Really showing my age, right? And she's, and that is what got me thinking again that I could be a writer. At the time, I had switched from the front of the house to the back of the house and was cooking for a living and pursuing, a career as a chef. And I always enjoyed it, but I never loved it. I read, but constantly coming to our office were these restaurant trade magazines, and I thought that's what I want to do, is write for those. I'm much more interested in what happens in the kitchen and goes to the plate than what people judge it as trendy or fabulous or farm to table or whatever. I'm really interested in the mechanics of how things work, and I still, to this day, 31 years later, write about the restaurant trade. A very small percentage of what I do. But in, I think it was 2002 or 3, I met this guy from Milwaukee named Fred Minnick. And he had joined the staff at a company where I had worked. I was covering the pizza industry, which was a lot of fun. And he was brought in to learn how to cover some of the restaurant scene in the fast casual set. And we worked closely together as I taught him about that, about the restaurant business. And long story short, we both left after a while and went out as freelancers. And in 2013, he said, Steve, somebody, a publisher has approached me about doing a Country Ham book. And I told him, I don't know a thing about Country Ham, but I know a guy who might. And I did, but not much. And so I wrote the book that you had mentioned earlier. Thank you very much. Country Ham, a Southern tradition of hogs, salt, and smoke, available at stevecoomes.com. And that book was not only a total joy to write. It's a true story. It sounds like hokum, but I swear it's true. When I was editing the final manuscript, I had some of this prosciutto sliced country ham around. I don't know whose it was, and there was bourbon there. And I was just getting into bourbon. It'd been maybe like 2 years, and I just, it's midnight, sipping a little bourbon, tasting the ham, and I was like, oh my gosh, this goes really well together. And that's when the presentation started after the book was published. In 2015, I did my first whiskey and ham pairing, and it's taken off.
Yeah.
Because people are like, hell, Fred Noe was at the first one.
Wow.
He's like, I've been doing country hams all my life. I never had bourbon with it like this. It's like, great, isn't it? So I've done several tastings with him and Freddie and a lot of industry personalities, and it is an absolute blast to put these two Kentucky treasures together.
Yeah. So
Very long answer to your short question.
No. That's great. That's what we wanted to hear. And I do have your book. I've not managed to make it through because Amazon was late in delivering it to me, unfortunately.
You know a guy. That guy could have brought you
Well,
one
I
for
know,
free.
but I just thought, it'd be nice kind of prep work just to read the book. But I was reading part of it, and I know, you said in the intro that you really wanted to share the stories, and you kind of wanted to just get out of the way and just share the stories of the people.
In the book, absolutely. Oh, they're all characters. There's salt of the earth, no pun intended, people.
Yeah.
Just people that are keeping alive a tradition and a way of life,
So, growing up, was country ham something that did you grow up with it, or was it just something as you got older in the industry as a writer?
I did. It wasn't just like everywhere, but my mom was a farm girl, and her father cured hams, and they didn't cure hams for luxury. They cured hams to stay alive.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Literally stay alive. And she would cook it occasionally. She would, go to the grocery store and get it cut into steaks, and she was a good cook, but she didn't know how to cook country ham, and would just murder it in the skillet, and it was baseball leathery and salty and just not the way it was meant to be. People had been eating cured hams for at least 1,000 years. I think cooking it was probably a relatively modern change, maybe 125 years ago.
Okay.
It is exactly like a prosciutto ham or a serrano or whatever. It's just aged with salt. Yeah. When I started turning her on to that, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I really missed out." But my older aunt would actually sneak into the smokehouse and just cut it off.
Really?
Yeah. So she knew how delicious it was. So as I was doing the book, and I was in Western Kentucky where there's several curing operations, I got to stay with my cousins who were part of that family, and they're like, "Really? You eat it like that?" Like, yes, I'll bring you some. And then it was fun to evangelize, to ham evangelize, as it were.
Yeah.
How good this tradition is.
Yeah, ham evangelize. I like that. That's great. So, Matt, let's jump back over to the bourbon, this William Heavenhill, the 15-year-old. What do you get in terms of the palate And then also, if you want to talk about the palate with the country ham, what do you think?
Let's try it.
Yeah.
So the palate.
Where'd that go?
Is,
Pour yourself up a little more.
Tippy top off.
Yeah, there you go. No, get that bottle, that cork pop.
That's right. So that sound.
it has some similarities that I get with Heavenhill products. There's like a subtle nuttiness that I often pick up. It's certainly not as pronounced as some of the other products, but there's a nuttiness that comes through. Certainly oak, a lot of influence from that barrel, a lot of vanilla, a lot of the caramel, little tannic on the taste, I thought as well. And actually, I took and just put a little drop of water in mine.
Yeah, I saw you do that. So what'd you think?
It worked for me. I had tried a sip after a drink of water just a little bit earlier, and I thought it opened a touch more, brought out a little bit more of the rye, kind of subdued a little bit of the tannic oak aromas and flavors as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought that worked well, but it brings out the peppercorn. There's that sweetness in there. And I think with the ham, it plays pretty well. The ham is nice and salty, briny, has those good smoky aromas. Maybe a little over oaky with the bourbon. Like that, the tannic effects of the bourbon and the ham. Like something a little hotter that was maybe a little oilier or greasier in the mouth. Like the ham might help to cut through a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly no expert in how to pair these together, but they both taste great.
I like the combination because I would take a bite of the ham and leave it in my mouth, and then I would take a sip of the bourbon.
That's exactly the way to do it.
Yeah, and it was unique because, like you said, Matt, you get a little smokiness, you get that saltiness, you get that wonderful ham pork flavor, but then you get that a little bit of that spiciness that comes through, but that sweetness. It's kind of reminiscent. Well, I mean, it's not like eating pork chops and applesauce, but I mean, you get that pork, you get the smokiness, you get that saltiness.
A lot of Brady Bunch references.
I know. What can I say? I'm a Brady Bunch fan, but it's a great combination. I mean, I really enjoy that sweetness, but the spiciness from the rye as well, combined with that ham. So, Steve, what about you? What do you think?
So when I do these pairings, and I can't take credit for all the language that goes into this, but I've worked a great deal with Kelly Ramsey of Art Eatables in Louisville and Andrea Wilson at Michter's, and we believe that there are three types of pairings. There's complementary, contrasting, and elevated. And complementary, just basically they don't offend each other when they're in the mouth. A bit of food and a bit of whiskey. A contrasting one, it has some fireworks. It's exciting. You get a little buzz on the tongue. You get some. Taste those different flavors. And then there's the elevated pairing, which combining the two makes each better individually and as a whole. I think it's just pretty darn close to an elevated pairing. And Mark, you did the exact right thing in that you want to take it, and especially in the case of ham or any fatty food. We use a lot of fat in pairings because it coats the palate. It gives the bourbon a chance to beat back that fat on the palate and reveal new flavors and sensations. And typically in these pairings, we use a lot of high proof stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. I think that, it really brings out the smoke, which isn't surprising since, the hams are smoked. Country hams typically are smoked, not all. And it accents the oak, which, carries that smoke flavors too from the charring. And gosh, it just that porky goodness that gets all around the mouth,
Yeah.
It's just, I love the pairing.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, it's a great combination. And I'm saving it. I wanted to tear into the other piece here, but I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to save it for round two.
There's a little more.
I'll probably have to be like you with the Heavenhill. Pour me up some more. Just cut me up some more of that ham over there. But great pairing. So, you know what? I mean, we're at the end of round one. So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll jump back into this conversation. But Matt, what are your final thoughts on the Heavenhill?
I think it's good. A great representation of nice, well-aged whiskey brought forward at a good proof. Great taste, good aromas, full mouthfeel, full body to it.
Yeah.
I have no complaints other than maybe price tag.
The price.
Yeah, price.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think?
I think you're exactly right. I think for me, Heavenhill crosses the line into Tannic Oak at 18. Where Lodge Craig 18, and what was it? Was it last year they had a 17-year-old bourbon that I thought was freaking phenomenal.
Yep.
So we're well below that line, and I'm still getting a ton of fruit and a ton of accent. That beautiful stuff from all these golly, you think I've had more than a quarter ounce of bourbon drink.
How many pours you've had over there?
All the esterification, that goes on. I think it's like you said, Matt, really well-aged whiskey. I like it. Price is high.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with the quality of the whiskey.
Yeah, and I think that's the only thing. I won't argue with the quality of the ham either. That was awesome, and paired with the William Heavenhill was incredible. The only thing about the whiskey, again, is the pricing, but it is kind of one of those bottles where you've got it on your shelf, and people that know whiskey will be like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'd like to try that."
Can I try?
Exactly right. So yes, to me, it's worth it to have it just so I can share it with people like you, Steve. Friends, people that come over. And that really appreciate. Now, if somebody came over and said, "Oh man, can I just pour that in my Coke?" Obviously, no. But it's nice to have those bottles around that you can share with people, right?
Need to have a little talk.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where you see it, you get fear, like that FOMO, fear of missing out real quick. You buy it and just don't look back. Don't think about it, the price or anything more. You got it. It's done.
It's done. That's right.
Be happy with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Matt, I think that's a great way to close out this first round. So let's do that. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Steve Coomes, talking all about Country Ham and Bourbon in just a minute. Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsoffrenchlick.com to learn more information, and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me today, live in person in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, I'm so happy to see that you're wearing your beanie today. That warms my heart.
It warms my head, too.
Oh, and we're sitting around the table, man, which is great. I wish we could do every podcast like this. I really do.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's just something about this table when you get... First off, when we're sitting around the table, it means we're having a good show because we've actually got some people here.
Exactly right. We got somebody live in person.
You and I, or we're on the computers. And I love sitting around the table because it's always just this beautiful mess of bottles, Glencairns, and things by the wayside, and just all the ingredients of a good time.
I agree, and that was what was fun about this show because. When I spoke with our guest, he said, "I'll bring the country ham," and I was like, "Well, we can just pick bottles. I've got a random selection of multiple bottles in my basement, and we'll figure things out." So today I was just going through and trying to find a few things, and I thought, well, maybe this will work. Maybe this will work. So just set a bunch of bottles out here. So it was a lot of fun for me to try to.
Pretty epic set, if I do say so myself. Yeah. Thanks for treating us well.
Oh, no, man. This was worth it. This is a lot of fun. And I like you said, Matt, this show I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. Since we started talking about it back in August, it's always been in the back of my mind. And I'm glad that we were finally able to make it happen. So with that said, Matt, tell everybody who we have with us here today.
We have the author of Country Ham, a Southern tradition of hogs, salt, and smoke, Steve Coomes. He's back with us. And Steve, I got to say, I was up this morning running at about 5:30 this morning, and all I could think about was this podcast this afternoon.
That's a good motivation.
Let me tell you, if I die on my way home from this, it's been a good way to go out.
Oh, how far did you run this morning, Matt?
Oh, just
just like
little
12 miles.
little under 2 hours. So
Yeah. So what? That was probably 12 miles.
15, I would think.
yeah, 15
yeah,
and change.
just 15. Well, so you've earned your country ham.
You did a halfie this morning. A halfie plus.
Yeah, man. You earned it. You did a half. Yeah, and then almost a 5K on top of it.
We're not worthy.
No.
Yeah.
We just pass all our ham down to him.
No,
Yeah.
enough about me. And let's get back to this ham. Let's get back to this.
I slept in till 9:30.
But what'd you pour up for us, Mark?
All right. Yeah, this round. This was given to me.
This is another little epic here.
Yeah, it really is. And I've got to give a shout out to Charlie Nelson down at Nelson's Greenbrier. Charlie's just a great guy. We've had him on the show before, and we're going to have him on the show again in January. I'm really looking forward to getting him back on. But he called me out of the blue, which was really fun, last week, I think it was, or week before last. And he said, hey, I've got a bottle I wanted to send to you. And I was just going to be in Nashville the coming weekend. So I was like, well, do me a favor, just hold on to it. And I'll stop by the distillery and pick it up. And, I'd love to see if you're available. But, he's a world traveler. He's all over the place, promoting the brand and doing everything. So we weren't able to connect. He's like, well, don't worry about it. Just stop by the distillery and we'll have it for you at the gift shop. So I get to the gift shop and I'm just thinking it's a bottle of whiskey of, whatever. And it was their 15-year-old rye, which was an absolute surprise and shock to me. So I am thrilled. And Matt, I have not put this big of a dent in it, Steve, just so you know. I shared half this bottle. I poured up for Matt, so he got half the bottle. So I have not had this much of it in just a week's time.
Sure, Mark.
But
A likely story.
I easily could have, because this is 15-year-old rye whiskey. This is sourced from MGP. Well, it says Indiana, but we know it's MGP. And I believe these are the barrels. Well, they had the Belmead brand as well that they were doing out of Nelson's Greenbrier. And they did a great job with those. And goodness gracious, the different with a honey barrel finish was insane.
What a freaking legend of a barrel.
Is that not? I mean,
Right? Talk about a barrel that paved the way, but broke the mold at the same time, right?
tell you what, that was insane. Did you end up with that bottle?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I was able to pick up a bottle of that. Yeah, my sister-in-law lives in Nashville, so she was able to grab a bottle for me and brought it up. Did we drink that? We drank that on the show with Charlie, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so Matt got the leftovers of that fancy bottle. But yeah, so that was the Belmead brands.
I'll take those sloppy seconds any day.
So this is a 15-year-old MGP, and this one comes in at, what did I say the proof was on this one? 1084, I think. Look at me, the old guy trying to read here. Yeah, 1084 proof, MGP barrels. I'm not sure if it says on here how many actual barrels went in this, but Steve, we were talking about this before we started. I mean, how many bottles do you get out of a 15-year-old rye whiskey? I mean, a standard barrel, you can get 220 maybe out of that if it's a young barrel.
Yeah, 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, but when you're talking 15-year rye, I don't.
At that proof.
Yeah, I don't know how many bottles. I can't imagine they got a lot. So this one was pretty heavily priced, probably about the same, I think, as that William Heavenhill. But Charlie graciously provided this bottle gratis. So very, very thankful to him, and can't wait to get him back on the show. We'll probably drink this if there's any of it left. So Matt, I'll throw it over to you, man, because you're the rye guy. So, and you've not had this yet, even though I gave you part of the bottle. You haven't had a chance to dive in, or you're saving it for something else, maybe. I don't know, but
well, by the time Charlie's on the show, we'll probably have to break into my bottle.
I know. I was going to say this one might be gone by then, Matt. So what are you picking up in this on the nose?
For 15 years old, and considering we were drinking the William Heavenhill 15-year in the first round at about the same proof, it does not at all nose like that old.
Yeah,
and
that's a great point.
I think that's a good thing. I like ryes a lot because of a lot of the aromas that you get. You get the different flavors. They don't always pick up as much barrel and a lot of that influence. So you get more of the distillate. You get more just those bright flavors. And this is, I think the barrel does play some in there because it's not as bright as most 95.5 Indiana ryes. I'm not picking up all the peppercorn I get usually, but there's a spearmint that comes through like right at the front, and it's nice and fruity, like red fruits, strawberries,
yeah,
like cherry, maybe a little even like like currant or cranberry, like kind of a tart sort of.
Matt, when I first opened this bottle and took a sniff of it after I got it home, it almost reminded me of like a double barreled whiskey, like it had been put into a secondary, just a toasted, not like a wine barrel or anything like that, but just another barrel that had been maybe heavily toasted or heavily charred even.
Yeah.
And it just had a sweetness to it, a little bit of that spiciness, but I just got like almost like a brown sugary creme.
Tons of brown sugar.
Yeah. So I mean, it's almost like in the color on this is just insane. Looking at it in the glass, the way the legs, it just runs and clings down. So, it's nice and oily. So I've not bitten into the ham yet, but I'm just waiting to do a little bit of that. Steve, what about you? What do you get in terms of the?
Oh my gosh. It's just like, I love rye too. In fact, if a doctor said bourbon or rye, it's rye. That's just where I'm going. I love the spice character. I love that the barrel it just never really seems to dominate it. Somehow it fights its way back, whether it's 3 years old or 13 years old. It just, I don't know. It's a complex beast. Tons of brown sugar, like I said, a lot of graham cracker, a lot of white pepper. I usually pick up dill quickly on, a lot of rye. None of it there. Maybe that just matures out. And no pickle accents, any of that stuff. It's spearmint or spearmint gum was dead on, and a lot of body, in this whiskey. Now, relative to the ham, I cheated and went ahead and had some of the Newsom.
Okay.
Coated my mouth thoroughly with that porky goodness, and with this. And we talked about the 3 types of pairings. This is, to me, is an elevated pairing. I mean, this made the ham better. The ham made this better. This is just fantastic. This is the stuff that I get excited for when I do these presentations. I don't think I'm ever going to have a bottle, a $299 bottle in a presentation. But that's pretty spectacular.
Say, hey, Charlie, if you're listening, we gotta take care of Steve.
Charlie, I'll come there. I'll do the presentation gratis if we can use cool whiskeys like this.
There you go. That sounds like a great deal.
I absolutely drive to Nashville.
I would travel. I was gonna say I would travel to Nashville for that. Matt, we'll bring you, man. We'll go stay with my sister-in-law and my niece down there. We'll hang out for sure. So, Steve, we were talking in the first round, and you were talking about your family, talking about the country ham. And the way I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I know nobody knows that because I don't mention it like every other show. But
you don't talk like that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I came to Lexington to go to UK back in the late 80s, mid 80s, I kind of dropped the accent. I don't want to say I worked on it, but I worked on it a little bit because I knew I wanted to go to law school, and I was concerned about the perception maybe. I mean, I can turn it on, and sometimes you can use it to your advantage.
Sure, you can.
People just automatically assume if you talk like that, then you're less educated. You're not quite as smart as they are. So you can use it to your advantage. But yeah, I did. I hate to admit it, but I did work on dropping that. But when I get back home, talk to my mom and dad, that accent comes back out pretty quickly. But growing up as a kid, country ham was my mama. Getting a big thick slice of that country ham and putting it in her cast iron skillet and frying it up, or my mother-in-law even, who's also from Eastern Kentucky, before she passed. That's some of my fondest memories, is country ham biscuits and the gravy that she would make with the renderings off of that country ham. But this is a totally different. I mean, we're talking about something kind of totally different. Well, it's the same ham, but it's a different presentation.
That's correct. Mostly because it's cooked. Secondly, because not what we're eating today, but the biscuit slices you were talking about.
Yeah,
absolutely. They're better when they're a 1/4 inch thick, or however thick they were. That's a better bite on a biscuit. But when it's sliced paper thin, in that prosciutto style, and no cooking involved.
Right,
completely different thing. And like I said earlier, this is maybe a 125 to 150-year-old phenomenon that it was cooked. Now, the Italian ham, the prosciutto, typically is just served cured. People want to say raw. It's not raw. It's cured. It has been salted to get most of the water out of it. And when the water is gone, there's no bacterial contamination. And that ham can age ad infinitum. I mean, you can turn into a doorstop in about 7 years, and it will never go bad if it's done right. But the Italians also cook it occasionally. It's called cotto, C-O-T-T-O. And I grew up in Italian restaurants, and I never saw cooked prosciutto in my life. So okay. I don't know how big a tradition that is. But my mom did it, like I said. She cooked it. It was tough. It was salty. It was not great. And when I did a story on Nancy Newsom in 2013, and she sent me this cure package, basically, 2012 actually, that had that prosciutto sliced ham in there. Prosciutto slice meaning, like on my slicer, it's 1.5 on a gauge of 20. That's how thin it is, paper thin. I was like, wow. This is brilliant. I never knew country ham could be like this because I always had it cooked.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I always had it, bookended by biscuits, at fast food operations. But this, to my belief, this is on par with the greatest hams in the world.
Yeah.
And Nancy Newsom from Newsom's Country Hams is the only American and the only woman ever to have been invited to, believe it or not, the World Congress of Hams. Now, I won't give you the Spanish pronunciation because we've been drinking. But you talk about a hell of an honor. And they took this Loretta Lynn type character and swept her up and put her on national TV in Spain. I mean, it gives me chills to think about the stories. And her ham, believe it or not, is still hanging in the ham museum somewhere in Spain. It really has a plexiglass case around it.
Wow.
That's how taken the Spaniards were, and the Europeans in general, with her ham. They recognized the quality of what we're having here today. In fact, the hams that they tasted probably weren't anywhere as good as this because the age is on it.
Gotcha.
So in the book is a great story of a guy named Bob Woods who is a curer in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at a place called the Hammery. And he was a lawyer and thought, that was boring. And he started making hams in his family business. And he said, "Hail, Steve, it ain't nothing but a hillbilly prosciutto." Dead on right. That's all it is. And the quality and the effort that he puts into his hams are the tensciutto, as he calls it. It's an 18-month-old ham. And to hold on to ham that long is a commitment. I mean, it's just like aging whiskey. You get evaporation or you're losing value, but you're gaining flavor and complexity that you didn't have when you and I were kids eating that country ham. That was probably a 6-month-old country ham.
Yeah.
These are old. Some of the oldest I've ever tasted were 6 years old, and they were a little bit too far gone, I think.
Wow.
But this is balanced, complex, moist, beautiful, and still fatty.
So let's talk about that too, in terms of the preparation of the hams, because like bourbon, obviously you've got grains, you've got the terroir that comes from those grains, you've got fermentation that goes into it, you got the yeast that goes into it, you've got the distillation process. There's so many different ways you can do it. You've got them aged in a rick house somewhere in different floors and different sidings. It's brick or it's metal or whatever. A lot of factors that go in the barrel itself that lead to that ultimate final flavor.
Absolutely.
So hams, I mean, it seems like it's kind of the same way, right?
Very much the same way. You've really done your homework, and I appreciate that. The Broadbent's ham is aged completely inside in a controlled curing environment, which is very scientific, very structured, rigorous, smart for volume preparation, and it produces incredible hams. Nancy Newsom is the only curer that I'm aware of in the United States that still does, is she would call it weather cured, meaning that once they're properly salted inside in refrigeration, she takes them out and hangs them in warehouses that are totally influenced by the weather. And so that's a risk because in these warmer times, you can lose hams that way because they have to stay basically below 45 degrees for about 3 months to be properly cured. And then it slowly, as spring comes along, the hams sweat. I know this is kind of graphic and nasty sounding, but they literally are starting to see much of the salt go in and penetrate the meat, and that pushes out water, and the ham begins to mature and complexify, to make it a word. And about April, May, June, most of them smoke it.
Okay.
And that's not common in European hams. The Germans do a smoked ham, which is really, really good. And I believe the French do as well, but the Spaniards and the Italians tend not to. We do something incredibly unique in this country that is of the highest degree of culinary quality, in my opinion. And it doesn't get much respect, even among the active curing companies, because it takes a long time. The USDA is a pain in the ass, shocker. And we don't see it in the heart of country ham country as prosciutto style ham. We see it something to go between biscuits, biscuit halves.
Sure.
You get beyond the Mississippi, go west and beyond the Mason-Dixon line and go north. And those Americans go, well, that's just cured ham.
Right.
They don't see it like we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know that tradition that you grew up with.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, to me, country ham, when you say country ham, to me, it's like instantly a southern thing. But I think it seems like the whole concept behind cured ham, that it seems to be changing
That's a great question. So I like to point to the late 1970s when Jimmy Carter said, I'm surprised it bubbled up to the White House, but apparently he gets credit for saying you can brew your beer at home now. And that started people playing around with, legally at this point, making their own beer. And that led to the craft beer movement. Mm-hmm. The same thing right now is happening with cured meats, in that there are tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that are curing their own salami, hams, all sorts of meats at home. And there's a group on Facebook called the Salt Cured Pig, 33,000 members of people who are curing, showing off what they're doing, and these people are operating at a high level of skill. I think that we're going to see a growth in cured meat shops. People doing this as a specialty. Chefs have been doing it for years. You probably know somebody who's was doing it in the back of their restaurant or some abandoned room somewhere where the climate was good for curing meat.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see an American renaissance, and I think exactly has happened with craft beer. I mean, America is now the beer place in the world. People want the variety of styles that we do. People love the fact that we go, tradition's cool, but we're gonna riff on it.
Yeah.
I think you'll see the very same thing happen with hams, but boy, it will go slowly because the USDA will go kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
With all these operations.
So from a restaurant perspective, because like dry aged steak, that seems to be over the last few years, restaurants, saying, hey, we're dry aging here. We got it on site. We're doing it. You can go into a restaurant and see it hanging or setting in a room. Do you see that kind of the possibility with cured ham as well, that could be a new trend or something that would be a drawing point for people?
Absolutely. The difference is even a long-aged, dry-aged steak is still just a few months.
Right.
So a ham needs a couple of years, I think, for my palate to really reach the kind of maturity and complexity that we're talking about here.
Okay.
Especially to put it beside a complex whiskey like we've done today.
Right.
2 15-year-old whiskeys. It takes a long time. What scares the USDA is when it leaves the premises. They make every country ham maker put on the package cook before eating. It doesn't need to be.
Right.
It is cured. It's ready to go. And but we import 4 million hams a year from Spain and Italy, which don't have to bear that label. And I don't understand the double standard. Nobody understands the double standard.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So yes, it will happen within restaurants first, I think. And once people get like, what is it, Porter Road Butcher in Nashville?
Uh-huh.
That's the kind of shop that we want to see grow into a cured meat shop as well, because their meats are fantastic. They're butchering on site. All that stuff that used to happen all the time, in my lifetime, 50 years ago.
Right.
Yes, it will happen, I think, in restaurants first and then grow out to retail and be something that we can have in a town like Lexington. Lots of those places.
I mean, that would be great, to be able to go out to a restaurant or a bar or a whatever you want to call it and have some great pours and do this, order different meats, different cured hams from different places in the United States and get to sample them like this and taste them with different bourbons. I mean, that would be such a unique experience to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So now, from your experience in the restaurant industry, I mean, are there people out there that are doing that now?
Tons of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, tons of them.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
surely there's somebody here in Lexington that's doing it.
I was gonna say, I wish, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm gonna have to look into. I know at like OBC Kitchen, I mean, they used to have a big, but I think it was is it Iberico?
An Iberico, yeah. An Iberico hog is a black-footed hog that is finished on acorns, which acorns are high in oleic acid, and that makes the meat just incredibly tender and moist and beautiful. But you got to cure it in 72 hours after slaughter, or it's no good.
Gotcha.
But it's actually healthful ham.
And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, like the mash bill, the grains, the everything else. I mean, you're feeding hogs different grains, different things, acorns, etc. Different breeds of hogs. I mean, there's a whole plethora of different things that go into it. It's so much more than what I knew.
Oh my gosh, the array of heritage breed hogs that cure well.
Yeah.
Some are too fat. The hams are too large and they don't cure well. But we have that in the United States. We have incredible breeders who have made some great crossbreeds of hams. And we also have in the Appalachian forest the greatest abundance of mast. Mast is what falls from the trees and animals eat on the ground. Uh-huh. And we have the most diverse mast in the entire world of all those trees there. And what was it? Woodland Farms Hams, which has been disbanded for about 5 years now, was centered in Kentucky. The hams are cured here, and the hogs were raised in the Appalachians. And that's the best ham I've ever eaten in my life.
Really?
And those hogs had great lives until that one bad day.
One bad day.
And it just, you're exactly right. It is terroir at its best.
Yeah, very cool. Matt, let's jump back to this whiskey, the rye, the 15-year-old. What do you get on that, man?
I want to get some more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pour some of that
absolutely.
up for sure.
It's everything I expect and I would hope for. Nice, all the spice that I was missing on the nose
comes through on the palate.
Yeah, it comes front and center on the palate.
I'm going to have a little more.
I'm
as well. I
actually
know.
gonna take a little
Just don't even put that lid on there, okay?
This is when I wish it was video. You can just see a big paw coming into your periphery. Don't even cork that. If you're...
Yeah, nice and spicy right
Yeah.
on the front of the palate. It's got that peppercorn,
Yeah.
a little bit of the cinnamon. I almost get like a ginger, like a kind of that spicy ginger,
Absolutely.
kind of like deep
Yeah.
rooted.
Ginger snap cookie I had last night. You struck that memory.
Yeah, like kind of molasses like as well.
Yeah.
I think some of the barrel is playing an influence. Maybe those darker molasses, like caramelized sugars and vanillas.
Yeah,
coming
coming in.
through. Yeah, as well. There's a little bit of fruitiness, not too much. I think what I was picking up on the nose is kind of chased out with the age on the palate. Mm-hmm. But nice oily mouthfeel, good covering, and it goes really, really well with the ham that we were having with the Newsom.
Yeah.
I thought especially the fattiness really helped the heat from the rye, I should say, really helped to cut some of the oily and the fat flavors
Exactly.
from the ham, and really the salt played really nice too. I thought with some of the like the sweet molasses and the ginger coming through on the rye as well, really started to help to accentuate that.
And here's the funny thing, Matt, because I went ahead and broke down and had some of the Newsom with this as well. But the Broadbent, when I tasted that and took a drink of the rye, the spiciness of the rye came out. There was more of that rye spice that came through. When I went over and ate the Newsom and took a drink of that rye, it was the sweetness that came out that lingered on the palate. So it was really unique that I got a totally different tasting experience from the two different hams with the same whiskey. So what a cool experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, I thought the Broadbents really did bring a lot of the spice forward, and I actually like trying the Newsom on its own. It has like that really funky umami, like forest floor type funk to it that I thought played really well with the rye, and really, like you said it well, brought out the sweetness and some of the sweeter flavors from the rye.
Good. See, hey, look, Matt, I can't give you
nailing
good
it.
descriptors on bourbon, but when you put it with Country Ham, man, I'm on my game, right? Steve, what about you? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, you're exactly right. That's an elevated pairing.
Yeah.
That each change each other and make it into something completely different. It just blooms in the mouth. Ginger is a great point. Molasses, absolutely. I've always gotten that on really well done MGP rye, brown sugar, molasses. I just think it's a great signature note. Mm-hmm. I think we're past people knocking MGP. I think we're in the finally in the period where everybody goes, yeah, that's really good whiskey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just because they were making it for others doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
not really good whiskey. That's terrific whiskey. I went back and tasted the William Heavenhill. I had a little bit left over.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, that rye grain stands out with the Newsom. I mean, really like raw rye grain. It's pretty, grassy, not quite lemony like I get sometimes, but it's good. This is stuff that I encourage people to do at home. It's so much fun. And I mean, taste anything.
Sure.
with it. Typically fatty. Chocolate's a great one. Smoked salmon's great. Ham is great. Brisket is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And warm to hot if you can do it. Any smoked pork is just ethereal for me. So, but even cheap Brock's orange slices will blow your damn mind.
Really? Okay.
with aged whiskey, cheap orange slices.
Very good to know.
So yeah, have fun with this stuff. I mean, Matt's going down the rabbit hole of these great descriptors, and don't let that intimidate you. That's how you learn, is you listen to people who have the palate that can pick that stuff out. And because all of us pretty much can taste these things, we just always can't identify them.
Right.
So
good point. Very good point. Yeah, I'm always intimidated by Matt, though. Guys, I'll tell you what, we're at the end of round 2 here. So let's take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Steve Coomes, talking about country ham and bourbon in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me today, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there at the end of the Flights to the Round table?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing so well. Doing so well today.
We're in hog heaven.
Oh,
Wait,
that's right. Nice.
I've been waiting to do that. I'm sorry,
I
Matt.
know you. Yeah. I'm surprised it's not written on our note sheet here.
Oh, man. Sorry about that.
That's all right. You got it.
Oh, man, we're having a good time today. This is a lot of fun, and I love doing these shows in person with our guests. It makes it a totally different experience. And this one, like we said before, this was a show that we've talked about for over a year. So I'm finally just so happy that we got to make this happen. And we got some great pours here and some great country ham. But Matt, tell everybody who we have with us.
Absolutely. We are back for round 3, and we are talking country ham with Steve Coomes, a journalist, copywriter, speaker, board member, author.
Everything.
Yeah. Regular.
Filling out that resume.
There you go.
Jack of all trades here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And master of country ham.
Yes.
Sort of.
Steve, welcome back for round 3.
Thanks for having me.
Man,
For all 3 rounds.
Yeah.
I didn't get kicked off
No.
the island at some point.
That's right. And you hung around. We appreciate the fact that you didn't stand up and just say, look, guys.
No, there is an open door nearby. The French
could just-
doors, it could have gone.
That's right. Bolt out the basement.
Grabbed a bottle along the way. One of the 300 I see all around.
There's a few bottles here and there. Yeah. So I need to, the goal is to build like an entire shelving system, back there where I can display everything and have easy access rather than opening doors and opening closets and going in the back room and the floor and just bottles everywhere. All right. So let's jump into round 3 here. This one is one that I thought would be fun just because we've had Fred and Freddie on the show before, and they talked about country ham. So I've got a bottle of Booker's, and this one is batch 2019. It's the 4th release from that year, and this one is called Beaten Biscuits. So I just thought it would be fun to have, the play on the biscuits and country ham. So I chose this one. This one is actually 126.1 proof. Booker's, honestly, one of my favorite bourbons. I love the releases if I can track them down. I hate the fact that the pricing has gone from $65-ish up to...
Shoot, I've paid $41 before.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen them at like $99 now, up to $100.
It was $100 last night at the distillery.
Was it? Yeah. So I get it. 90's the new 50, Steve. We talked. So, it's you're only paying $50 in 2019 dollars, right?
That's right. We have high inflation dollars now. So.
Oh man, yeah,
it's
exactly
120.
right. This one is 6 years, 6 months, and a total and 19 days. I love that one. But with Booker's, each release has a given name to it. They did a release called Country Ham because Booker Noe was a big fan of Country Ham. So everything that they release on these Booker's lineup, they have some tie-in to Booker's. Like they did a pigskin, which is about football because Booker was a big high school football player and loved football. But this is Beaten Biscuits. I think his grandmother or his mother used to make Beaten Biscuits, and Booker apparently loved it. So anyway, that's why I chose this bottle. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
The nose on this, I get a good amount of orange.
Okay.
Oranges and orange zest right on the nose, and some baking spices as well.
Always.
Cloves really come through for me. A little nutmeg.
Okay.
There's definitely vanillas coming through, like a creaminess, almost like orange creamsicle type note, and then nice soft oak in the background as well. Some of that barrel influence, a little bit of like little barnwood type aroma, kind of like that natural, kind of funky barnwood.
Yeah, and this one's been open for a while too, so it's probably kind of mellowed out maybe just a little bit. You know, it's not, when you say that you're drinking something that's 126 proof, sometimes people will be like, oh my God. But on the nose, this one really doesn't, to me, it doesn't punch me. Of course, it could be because I've already had 2 different high proof 15-year-old whiskeys before this one. But Steve, what about you? What do you get in terms of the nose on this?
When I picked it up a couple of minutes ago, I got leather.
Okay.
Beam also has a like you said, that big barnwood note for me. First thing was I got, it's gone already, but right out of the bottle was tea berry gum.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there was a huge cinnamon accent in there. I mean, Matt, you're talking about baking spices. It's all over it. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of nutmeg in my mouth, but I love the aroma. But I just think it's good stuff.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, the Booker's pours, because there's not a ton of deviation between them. I mean, you're going to vary a little bit in proof, but you're still going to get some pretty consistent flavor profiles.
Absolutely.
on these.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And again, year after year and release after release, they're one of my favorites. Again, the pricing has kind of maybe pushed me away just a little bit over the last year or so. But I'm always happy if I can pick these up to grab one of these for sure.
I wrote a column about it when they warned that they were going to raise the price, and this has to be 5 or 6 years ago. And I went back and I found the introductory price in the early 90s. It was $39.
Wow.
And there was a store in Prospect, Kentucky. I used to live in Goshen for a while, and that was our store, the Prospect Party Center. And they actually, at the same time that the news was released that they were going to raise the price to somewhere around $80, it was still on the shelf for $43. And me being kind of newish to bourbon, I only bought 4 bottles. I should have just said, "Okay, honey, let's set aside some money for some more case buys." But my column was about, and I love Jim Beam, and I know Fred and Freddie have no control over pricing, but I just said, this is just dumb. If you're still comfortable letting this whiskey go onto the shelf at a retail price in the low 40s, why do you want to go 100% higher? Can't you ease that up? What does the Fed have? Quantum easing?
Yeah.
Is that what they call it? 59. Go 59. Can I hear 59, 59, 69? Maybe
right.
Do some sort of easing. But at the same time, I'm enough of a capitalist to say, get what you can get.
Right.
And I hate that happens at my expense. But, last night I paid $100 for this very same release because my wife loves it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
High influence there.
Yeah. There you go. That's right. When the wife says, "Hey, I would really like that bottle," then you say, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that."
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, no doubt. And the funny thing is, I mentioned earlier in terms of the Heavenhill selling for so much on the secondary, and I don't, I'm in Facebook groups and I see these prices. It's not something I follow. And Booker's is one of those that really doesn't have much of a secondary resale value on.
Craziness.
Yeah. So, which is like, I don't understand when I look at those pricings, and I don't want to get into a whole nother topic, but some of these bottles that are selling for whatever, $500, $600, $700, $800. And then I see things like this, or even like I said, the Elijah Craig, the barrel proof. And I bought 2 bottles of that for $60 each. And I'm like, Why? Why would somebody sell a $75 bottle of bourbon for $60? But I'm not going to complain because I got it.
Right.
But Booker's is one of those ones that, yes, it the pricing has gone up retail, but secondary, it just doesn't really fetch that type of interest, which is kind of surprising to me for some reason. But anyway,
I don't get it. And I think sometimes people look at Jim Beam White and think, oh, what anything that comes from that same mash bill can't be good.
Right.
Nonsense.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Absolute nonsense.
Yeah. I love what they do. And I love these Bookers. I mean, it's a great release. I just wish the pricing wasn't where it was. So Steve, we were talking a little bit off air about the process, and that's something that I don't know a lot about. So if you don't care, would you take a few minutes or as long as you need? We don't care. We got lots of bourbon to drink, so take as long as you'd like, and kind of share with our listeners, because the process. I mean, you've got a hog, and then you've got this beautiful piece of meat to enjoy. How does it go from hog to that?
So we'll take the prettier route because of the hams that we had before us. Not that long ago, before really mass industrialization of pork production and beef production, these hogs lived in the field and they rooted for grubs and they ate plants. They did all these sorts of things, right? And that influenced the character of the meat, the flavor of the meat, terroir we've talked about. Typically a hog is slaughtered about 12 months. For a heritage breed hog, they can be as high as 300 pounds at the time. Typically 250 is a good weight. If the hams are too big, they cure slowly, and that's, again, time is a big thing to a producer of either whiskey or ham, because they don't get a thing until they sell it, right?
Right.
So they need to recoup their investment. Luckily for a ham, a green ham, as they call it, which is a fresh ham, costs about $45. So once you get the ham, let's just jump right into the process. It's salted. It's typically given a coating of salt. Country ham has some mixture of brown sugar and cayenne or maybe black pepper in there, none of which has any influence except the salt. I'll just say it right now.
Okay.
People say, oh, it's a sugar-cured ham. Sure it is. Sugar is not hygroscopic like salt is. And by hygroscopic, I mean it almost seeks out water and pushes it out of the ham. You've got to deprive that meat of moisture to eliminate the bacterial contamination and growth to cure that meat. People knew this, 1,000 years ago that would produce the result that they wanted without knowing what the hell hygroscopic, materials are. Mm-hmm. In a country ham, let's just say back when my grandfather was doing it, I'm old enough to remember cold Thanksgivings. In Kentucky, it was common to cure or slaughter hogs on Thanksgiving weekend because a lot of people who had worked in factories had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. And slaughtering a hog is a big effort. And to do even a few is an all-day transaction. So they would slaughter the hogs, go in on Thanksgiving, have the Thanksgiving meal, and probably go back out and finish up. But they would kill the hog. It has to be hung, it has to be bled, and then it has to be broken down primals first, hams, head, shoulders, all that kind of stuff. Some of it would be turned into sausage, some turned into bacon. Typically that's going on in the kitchen with the women, and they were doing that kind of stuff, jarring it, canning it, actually. But in terms of a ham was just, a ham, for those who may not know, is just the hind quarter, the what would be your gluteus maximus all the way down the leg.
Okay.
And it's salted, it's hung. That salt gets into the meat, pushes out the water. Typically you salt it again just to make sure that you have enough salt. The actual salting phase probably is about a 50 to 60 day process in the olden days when it was done outside. And that ham would be safe to hang outside and cure through the winter, lose its water, begin to gain complexity and flavor and safety. The old saying in the ham business is, it is a race to the bone between water and salt. If you have water that gets to the bone, you have a bad ham. If you have salt, you have a cured ham. And at about springtime, if it's still outside, that was a time when the sweats began because the salt is still in the meat. It's going to act some more. It's going to sweat some more. and it becomes safe at about 5 months. So that's why you had a lot of Easter hams.
Oh, okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Christmas ham was 13 months old, or 12. Yeah, 13 months old. You had a Christmas ham, much more complex, much more flavorful. And they cooked both typically in the South where most of the hams are made. But I skipped over the smoking step. At about May or June, they smoke it. Some believe that smoking has some preservative aspects. It really doesn't.
Oh, okay.
It's just
Flavoring.
Absolutely flavoring.
And
Some even believe that it doesn't penetrate the meat. Horse hockey. These hams show no smoke ring like a pork shoulder or a brisket would, but you can taste the smoke.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's
that
in there.
because in a pork shoulder or brisket, the smoking is actually the cooking process, why you get the smoke ring, that halo around it.
Yeah.
Absolutely great point, Matt, because this is a cold smoke. So Newsom, for instance, will smoke, Nancy will smoke those hams over the course of 3 weeks. Just cool smoke. There's a pot. It is an ugly Hansel and Gretel looking kettle, right? That's in the corner of her smokehouse, and she creates a fire of small hickory sticks, sawdust, bigger logs. It's just like any smoking operation. You must start with a fire that can smolder for a long time. Some of these people use, is it not sassafras? That's a root. I'll think of it in just a second. But it's a mixture of really good dry wood and green wood, and it's smoked over time. And you can't smoke in the rain, or because the high humidity makes it run like mascara. It's really ugly, and the smoke doesn't cover and coat and give this beautiful. Some of the smoking is for beauty. Period.
Gotcha.
It just gives it that gorgeous chestnut color. But and then once it's safe, by June and July, it's on. It just ages and sweats more moisture, and it becomes more complex, and it's beautiful. And typically, a 9-month-old ham is a good flavored ham. 12 months is amazing if they take care of it correctly. I've done one that was 26 months old. It was remarkable.
So you did it yourself?
I did. I just did it in a dorm refrigerator. and once I felt it was cured, I hung it, I think probably in the bathroom, and then went to a garage, and then my wife and I moved to a condo, and I went to a bathroom, and then I went out to a smokehouse, friends of mine. It's just the ham got moved around wherever it was convenient. I had no idea of climate control or non-control. It just matured, and I kept smelling it and checking it. It was beautiful, and I eventually cut it at 26 months, and it was spectacular.
Wow. Very nice. Matt, that's a new hobby right there.
I'm thinking, like the wheels are turning.
I could tell. I knew they were. Yeah.
This might become my new pet project here.
I think it's a great idea.
So I want to tie this to Booker.
Yes.
So Booker, if you ever see his house on 3rd Street in Bardstown, it's where Fred lives now. Each time you graduate, when a No dies, the next No moves in.
They move. Okay. Gotcha.
Next to that house is a Witch's Peak building, brick building. It's circular. You guys have probably seen it. That was the ammunition storage for what was a military academy in 1820.
Okay.
Right? They eventually turned it into, one of the beams turned into a smokehouse. That's where Fred and Freddie still smoke hams, a few. Booker used to do a lot. But so it's still done. They're still carrying on this tradition of curing hams and bacon, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Back to my work with ham pairing. In 2015, when I did my first pairing, my wife was not a bourbon fan at the time. And she said, I don't care. I'm going to put on my big girl panties. I'm going to go down there and I'm going to taste everything they put in front of me. It was a strictly ham tasting, 5 hams, 5 beam whiskeys. And the last one was Booker's. And I said, later after we finished and cleaned up, I said, what was your favorite? She said, Booker's. I was like, you're kidding me. That punch in the face is your favorite? And she said, it's where the flavor is.
Yeah.
So even though she now drinks Booker's on a rock, a big sphere, she made the point. She got it at an infantile stage in her tasting experience that's where the flavor is. And this is really flavorful whiskey.
Yeah.
No matter what you do to it. And people would ask Booker, is it okay if I put, Booker's and Coke? And he's like, it'll be the best damn Booker's and Coke you ever had. Or whiskey and Coke you ever had.
Yeah.
And so that is, I just love this whiskey. I love the history. I love the story of the man. I never got to meet him.
Yeah.
but it is outstanding with this ham, and I think that's where I'm getting that tea berry, that cinnamon gum, big red flavor from.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, Matt. Let's talk about the palate. I'm sorry,
You
Matt.
got me with a mouthful here.
That's okay. You got a mouthful of ham, man. That's the best way to share when you've got a mouthful of a ham. So what do you get in terms of the palate?
He's got to rinse with whiskey now.
Yeah, rinse that ham down with some Bookers, man. What do you think?
So the palate on the Bookers, to me, hits those Jim Beam notes that I'll often pick up. There's that peanut coming through. There's a little bit of like orange marmalade.
I get orange marmalade. I've never gotten the peanut.
Really?
And I love peanut.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah.
I often find that, like especially on the Knob Creek.
I'm the outlier. You're not. Most people get that.
Yeah. No, and I agree because that's what I pick up too. That's why I was thinking on the nose. I didn't pick up any like peanut. I'm like, that's odd. So when I took a sip, I was like, yep, there's the peanut. So,
there's like caramelized brown sugar. Like think of like kind of almost like a tropical note. Like think of the caramelized side of a pineapple upside down cake, where you get that caramelized kind of spongy, nice side. Not as much of like the pineapple, but there's like something punching through with a little bit of fruit on it as well. But good vanilla, good influence from the barrel again. Like nice maturity coming down the line. Yeah, to balance out some of the sweet and spicy, kind of nutty aromas that we've had and flavors that we had. Pairs well with the ham.
I was gonna say, so how are your biscuits and ham?
I think again, this the Broadbents brought out more of the rye. Yeah, really brought the proof from this too. That 126 proof. I think the Broadbents really brought some heat with this, whereas the Newsom again chased out those sweeter notes. Kind of the molasses, the honey came through. Yeah, almost like a little sorghum, or just like the sweeter flavors come through with that one.
Yeah, Steve, what about you?
Matt's killing it.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
And no further questions, Your Honor. I mean, pay attention to what he says. I really think it sweetens the Bookers. It's just very center palate, baking spice. You're exactly right. The rye comes to life. I never get the peanut for whatever reason, but I do get the orange zest. Honeyed is not right, and molasses I'm not getting. I'm trying to think of what's in between because it's not maple for sure, but there is a syrupy quality that's really good. A caramelized sugar, like you said, pineapple upside down cake quality. I just think you cannot go wrong with Bookers. A friend of mine last night said she had a bad bottle of Bookers. And I'm like,
give it to me.
Has to be an anomaly.
Yeah. That's like I don't know that they exist, right?
Yeah. And she's got an excellent palate, so I respect what she said. But I was like, okay.
I'm just going to tell you the Bookers with that Newsom. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even talk about elevated, Steve. I mean,
you want some more?
Man, if you've got more, it'll just load me up. Yeah, we'll take some. I'm going to take some more of that Newsom because that was phenomenal. I mean, I don't know. I can't even explain it. the Broadbent, it's really good, but that Newsom with that Bookers, and maybe it's because it brings out, like Matt was saying, that sweetness, and I noticed that with that 15-year-old rye from Nelson, that it's just that sweetness that comes out when you pair that ham with that whiskey. So maybe that's just, I don't know, something about it just really strikes a chord with me, but that is absolutely delicious. Matt, I'm so happy we were able to do this show, man.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. So Steve, let's just talk about a little bit about, something I saw on your website, your tagline there on your website. It says, telling the stories of the people and the products in every area of food and drink. So talk about that. Talk about that in terms of the importance to you and why you want to do that.
I think I mentioned it earlier when I started writing about food. I was much more interested in who made it and how they made it. I've spent 31 years writing about food and have tasted some of the best it's ever made, but I'm much more interested in that. And what is their thinking behind it? Why do they do what they do? Why does Nancy Newsom risk that many hams to weather curing? It's tradition. It's mastery of the craft. It's just taking what God gives you and making the best of that particular product. And now I don't think she would ever lie to me and say, "Oh no, we never lose some hams." I think you got to lose some hams somewhere. But the ones that come out of it during COVID, she had some 40-month-old hams.
Wow.
They were funky. Funky James Brown funky hams. And there was ripe fruit and all this crazy stuff coming out of cured meat that she had nurtured the whole way because nobody was there to buy them. Those restaurants weren't open to buy those hams. When she just said, "I'm not even going to sell it to you. I'm going to send it to you because I know that you like this stuff and that you'll get it out there." And that's, to me, that's what this is all about. And you talk to these distillers about the craft that they put into it and the yeast. And you have somebody as young as Freddie Noe going, with an historic company like Jim Beam going, "We're still experimenting with yeast."
Wow.
Not only for yield, but for flavor.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's exciting. That's, I can't wait to taste that. Call me in 8 years when it's ready.
Right.
Because I'm excited. We talked a little bit about secondary markets and people, what they pay for this stuff because it's old, because it's this, because it's that, and they disrespect bookers? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You'll get in line for a twice blended MGP bottle,
Right.
and ignore bookers? Give me a break.
No, I agree with that 100%. It's kind of crazy.
These are craftspeople who have spent a long time at it, and I don't know how much time you guys have spent around Freddie Noe, but he can very quickly talk over your head.
Yeah.
Fred's not like that. It's a different generation. Fred speaks well of history. Somehow Freddie has been supercharged with chemistry and knows this is where we're going.
Yeah.
To me, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I love the crafts. I love the crafts person and what they have to say about what they're doing.
And that's what I love about the brands. And we had Fred and Freddie, and I think it may have been Freddie that was talking about it, because we talked about craft, versus a large distillery. And they're like, what we do, it's still craft. I mean, it's
just on scale.
Exactly right. I mean, that's what they said was, we are still a craft, and especially with the Fred B. Noe distillery, now that Freddie is the master distiller. I mean, he's got a kind of a smaller situation there that he can work with.
Yeah, only a 24-inch still.
Yeah, it's smaller. Yeah, right. But it's still really cool that they look at what they do still as craft, because it is. I mean, what they do, they're still crafting their whiskey. They're still crafting their brand. And like you said, it's just to scale. It's different. But it's still, to me, I still consider that to be an amazing craft and a skill that a lot of people don't have, except for maybe Matt.
Don't have it.
Don't have it?
Nope.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, so Steve, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you have a favorite country ham or cured ham?
Oh, boy, that's tough. It's just like whiskey in that season by season, you're going to get different ones.
Gotcha.
Some of the 40-month Newsom hams, I don't know that they were my favorite, but they pushed the edge of the envelope so far out that I've respected that ham or those hams more than anything I've ever tasted, because she just said, "I'm going to let them roll.
Wow.
And see what you like." I think some of my favorite, the most consistent, reliable, beautiful, complex hams I've ever had, country hams, are the Broadbent's 24s. I just think they're amazing. They're amazing that they can hit that target with hog flesh. How hard is that? Dry corn, dry rye, dry barley. You can pretty much manipulate that how you like. But there was a living animal that gave up those legs. Yeah, that's right, 2.
Yeah.
The 4 legs went to barbecue. The rear legs went to ham. But some of the greatest that I've ever had were the Edwards hams. Sadly, the curing operation burned to the ground about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
They made about 50, again, hams to scale. They did 50,000 hams a year, and they did them in a Virginia style, which we won't go into. But those were, to me, the premier example of American charcuterie in a ham. And I knew they were important, but when the damn operation burned to the ground, it made the New York Times.
Wow. Okay.
That's important.
Yeah.
Those writers knew that was a significant thing, and because of litigation and insurance companies and nobody wanting to pay the bill for a complete accident, that operation no longer exists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So those were unicorn hams that we're never going to taste again.
Yeah.
And that's sad. So America needs to embrace its tradition. This tradition of cured ham doesn't have to be a country ham. La Quercia in Iowa does a great job of it. They do an American-style prosciutto that is heavenly. Nothing against that. I will eat that all day long. But, man, I love what we do down in the South with smoke.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. And our climate still is perfect for that. So, long answer to your short question. I'm a fan of anybody who wants to shop. The Hammery, the Prosciutto is brilliant.
Okay.
There's a kitty cat in there.
Yeah.
The Broadbent's 24-month, the Heritage Ham, anything from Newsom's over 12 months old will blow your mind. Typically, 20 is really where I like to get in and play. And let's see, 10. And there is an Edwards version out there that's done by Burgers Meats. Not quite as good, but it's still quite good.
Yeah.
So
those are like they can get on websites.
Get them on the web. Yeah.
Okay.
The only problem is you have to figure out who's going to slice those things prosciutto.
Oh, yeah.
Because they still, some of those curers don't believe that. Oh, Benton's. Gosh, Benton's in East Tennessee. What a brilliant ham.
Okay.
Heavily hickory smoked. Getting it sliced prosciutto style is a tough thing. Some of these people will do it. They'll send it vacuum sealed, and it's all squished together, unfortunately. What I did for you guys today was cut that ham and just lay it gently on top of each other. It pulls apart nicely.
Yeah.
It's still really fresh.
Thank you so much for that.
I want American cures to come around to that and see that as something significant and important in what people want.
Yeah.
And they're slowly turning around to it. And God love them. We're all friends, and I convince them, come on, do it.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll be the legacy that most of these leave behind, is that it's important to do.
You made a believer out of me. No doubt, Matt. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm glad somebody's out there telling the story.
Yeah, man.
Getting us all on board.
Spreading the
with this.
gospel.
Yeah.
Ham evangelism.
That's awesome. Now, okay, Steve, before we get out of here, I hear you're maybe a tequila fan as well.
Oh,
is that right?
Gosh, I love tequila. Love tequila.
We'll have to do another episode maybe and do.
I will do a tequila 101.
All right.
For the group anytime.
Yeah,
I'll bring the booze and talk about heritage, history, all of it.
All right, that
scandals.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I love tequila. I'm a big fan. So, Matt, final thoughts on the Bookers, the beaten biscuits, but also the ham. What do you think?
It's hard to go wrong with the Bookers, aside of recent price increases. Just what's in the bottle is never to be batted an eye at. It's excellent.
Amen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Worked well with everything. Again, I thought with the Newsom brought all those sweet flavors out. Just this whole episode, this has been
man,
one for the record books.
One of my favorites. I mean, this has really been one of my favorite episodes that we've done. There's no question about it.
Thanks for tolerating my babbling.
No, this has been great.
Clearly,
Steve.
I'm passionate about this.
So, Steve, what's been your favorite part of the journey in terms of bourbon and country ham so far?
Their confluence. When they came together for me, it just opened my eyes. I thought,
great.
This whole world of pairing with whiskey, American whiskey and American products.
Yeah.
I mean, golly. I mean, wine's brilliant, beer's brilliant with food, but I just think that nothing beats American whiskey and ham, or American whiskey and food, because it's ballsy enough. It's high proof. It'll wrestle the food to the ground. Scotch, no. Irish whiskey, no. They're just not going to do it.
Right.
The world looks at us sometimes and thinks, you're kind of brash, kind of cocky. Yeah. And our whiskey says, yeah, we're brash and cocky.
Exactly right.
And I encourage people to play around with this at home and enjoy it. Do it neat. If you put ice in it, you're going to dilute literally the experience. Taste it with your food a little at a time. Fatty is always good. Fatty chocolate, milk chocolate, not bitter chocolate is best. Have fun with it. I mean, whiskey is fun. Whiskey people are a blast.
Yeah, I agree, man. We've had a great time today. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, Matt, we've looked forward to this episode for over a year now. and we finally got to do it.
Yeah. And just like you were saying, Steve, whiskey people are a blast. In 3 seasons of doing this, how many times, Mark, have you and I had a recording session in the middle of a busy week at night?
Yeah.
And we're just,
Yeah.
you feel like you're
Tired from work.
Yeah.
Yes.
You just feel you're dragging your feet going into there, and you always come out feeling better.
Yeah.
You get to talk to great people. You get to share the experience of whiskey or whatever you might be talking about, and just getting to know someone, getting to chat with someone, getting to just be with someone for a little while that understands the same thing that we're going through and drinking on the same thing. It's just it's a great time.
I agree completely with that.
Amen.
Matt, so let me ask you this. Steve, people want to find out more information about who you are, where they can find information about what you do, your services, everything else. Where can they find that?
Steve, that's my email, steve@stevecoomes.com, but stevecoomes.com will show you what I do. And I need to update my website a hell of a lot more, I'm sure, as you know, after doing some homework on it. But I'm passionate about, pairing. And the American experience in terms of whiskey and food is not even close to being tapped.
Yeah. Well, this is great, and I think everybody needs to experience something like this. I mean, this has been a lot of fun, and like I said, doing research for this, and I mean, it opened my eyes to a whole new world of what cured and country ham is and can be. So I was just really excited to be able to do this, man. So this has been a lot of fun. Matt, final thoughts before we get out of here today.
Didn't disappoint. This was exactly what I was hoping for, and then some.
Awesome. Steve, final thoughts? Anything you want to share before we close it out?
I'm so glad that you guys asked me to do this. It reminds me that we're on the right track. We're having fun. And join us, people.
Yes.
This is such an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And this has been a blast. Thank you so much, Steve, for bringing the cured ham.
Should have brought more.
Hey, it's been great. I'm just telling you, man, you've opened my eyes to a whole new world of what's available out there and what we can pair. And when you said smoked salmon, because I love salmon, so now I'm thinking pairing some salmon with bourbon and trying to do a whole thing with that at some point, because that would be a lot of fun. Definitely. But we appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming over and doing this with us live in the Bourbon Life Studios. It makes it so much more fun, without a doubt. So
my pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, guys. So thanks everybody for tuning in wherever you are, whatever time of day it is you're listening to us. We appreciate you tuning in and checking us out. We appreciate your listenership. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for everything that you do for us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you feel so inclined, leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.